Hi, my name is John Paul Raj, and this is part 10 of the Complete Solution series for May 2025 IB Math AI HL Paper 1 Time Zone 1. Let's roll the intro. All right. Here we go. This is question number 10, and let's just get rid of that title. Hopefully it should go off. Not yet gone off, and I can't even see my screen share. I don't know why. Just give me a second. Let me see whether this is connected properly. Accidents happen. I need to say something. Maybe I'll say that this is a video. Some of you may be wondering how come he's not edited all these things off. And it's because it's all being recorded in real time, and it's still not showing. Really? Okay. Yeah, I decided to just keep all the errors. As you can see, what am I on? There you go. Finally, I'm glad you were able to see this little flaw. So, and I don't know how I should get rid of the other one. Maybe let's try this one. Oh, there it went off. Oh, there you go. It came back again. All right, you're seeing all the things that should happen behind the scenes and should actually be edited out. But I'm just keeping it so that it really helps to see that mistakes do happen. And I just wanted to keep it raw. And if you don't like it this way, just let me know in the comments, what do you think about it? But actually, the other reason to keep it raw was actually to improve. I want to improve, in one take. I want to try and see how well I can do, what are the things that I need to find out. And it helps me also see the recordings and say, okay, what are the things that are going wrong? So the whole series, ever since I started recording again or uploading on YouTube again, thanks to many of you who messaged me. I don't know what this video is becoming. I'm actually going to solve the question or not. I don't know, but I just became a confessional. So let me continue, go with the flow. So actually many people did write and encourage me to come back. And I thought I was spending too much time on editing, all these mistakes that I was making. But I just wanted you people to know that I'm human. I do make mistakes, and I didn't want to edit out any of the mistakes. I just wanted to edit it or record as I go. It just helps the other part of not spending too much time on the edit. So that being said, that's all. If you want to know more about that, maybe some other day, just drop in a comment and I'll let you know. Okay, right now, as you can see, as I switched, that showed up. The earlier time it did not show up. So here we go. This is question number 10, and it looks like a functions question. Consider the function f of x is equal to ln of 2 minus x plus ln of negative 2 minus x minus 2 ln of negative x. And sounds like so much like poetry, where x is less than negative 2. You know what? Whenever you see this, do not take it lightly. Okay. A good habit is just underlining with pencil as you're reading. Okay. The function f of x can be rewritten in the form. Oh, so algebraic question again. What I mean by algebra is that, of course, you got to use the algebra of logs in this particular case to try and write it in as a single term, and then you'll be able to identify that gx currently. Find an expression for gx. Let's do it. Okay. Here we go. So f of x, what color should I use? Let's just use green this time. So this is part A. F of x is equal to ln of 2 minus x plus ln of negative 2 minus x. Now there's something common between that, or there's something you can see, 2 minus x and negative 2 minus x. So, that should give you a hint, because you guys are AI students, and AA students would probably, recognize. Just because, that course is more algebraic, there's nothing against you AI students. I love AI students. So, but just develop those things, because as you can see, there are several questions that are requiring even AI students these days to be able to write some algebraic, to exercise some algebraic skill, all right? So, therefore, that hint that the moment you see a pattern, something like this, 2 minus x and negative 2 minus x, it only means that, perhaps you need to try and combine them, and some manipulation, some algebraic manipulation needs to be done there. And of course, there's one more term, which is a negative 2 ln of negative x. Okay, let's go ahead with that. And this can be rewritten, right? So let's just go ahead and do that. So we'll say the first two terms are basically ln of 2 minus x times minus 2 minus x. Okay, and then divided by you should have done that term. Okay, let's just do that. Okay, let's just do that first. Okay, so basically what I was trying to say is that this term should have been rewritten first, then you can combine it in the denominator also. So nothing wrong in writing this as I wrote. You can write this as ln of 2 minus x times negative 2 minus x, combining the first two terms only. What I was trying to do initially was I was trying to see whether I can put all three terms combined in one step, okay? Basically, the first thing that needs to be done is you need to write it like this first. The power rule needs to be applied first on the third term before you then combine, okay? So when you combine all, now you've got the first two terms combined as that term. The third term has to be written like this, the power rule, before you can bring it on and write it as one single term. So what that does to this expression is ln of 2 minus x, and what I'm going to do right now, watch this, okay? I'm going to write it as 2 minus x, but I'm going to pull out a negative sign and write it as 2 minus, or is it plus? Okay, plus x. I hope this is clear. I'll explain that in a bit. Let me just finish writing this, okay? So this is negative x square. Is this correct? Let me just check. Okay, I think this is correct. Okay, so what did I do in this for the second bracket? Just watch this, okay? What I did was I have factored out a negative sign, okay? Minus 2, it was minus 2 minus x. So what I've done is I've pulled out a minus 2 here, and then it becomes, you know, if you were to distribute the negative sign in that bracket, it is negative 2, and minus times the plus is minus, negative times the positive is negative x. So the expression remains the same in its value, but we factored it out. The negative sign is factored out because of a reason, and that's what I meant by saying that, you know, the more you practice algebra, you'll see the patterns. And the pattern that I'm beginning to see is that there's a 2 minus x and there's a 2 plus x. Yes, there's a negative sign in front of it. We'll take care of that in a bit. But there's a 2 minus x and a 2 plus x around there. And that means, you know, suddenly it should ring a bell with, you know, a familiar algebraic formula, which you might have seen earlier, a minus b, a plus b in that form is basically a square minus b square. The factoring, okay? The factoring of what they say is difference of squares, the difference of squares, a square minus b square, a minus b, a plus b, and therefore it was important that you write it in that form. If you're not written in that form, if you're not factored out that negative sign, you probably might have not seen it as 2 minus x and 2 plus x. That is what I'm trying to say. Now you can rewrite this expression as ln of, you know, this is just multiples. 2 minus x is one term in a bracket. Whenever you put a bracket or in parentheses, it just means one term. 2 minus x is one term. Then there's a negative. It literally means a negative 1, okay? If there's no number there, it literally means there's a negative 1. It's negative 1 times that other term, 2 plus x, okay? So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to bring that negative 1 outside in before all those terms, because it's still negative, right? Negative 1 times, and I'm just bringing that negative 1 on that side. And then I will write down my terms 2 minus x and 2 plus x. Hope that step made sense. If it did not, drop in a comment. I'll try and explain it again. Just spend one entire video on just explaining what that factoring means, because this is where I'm surprised that more and more for AI students in the HL, at least in the HL part, they are stressing on algebra. They meaning IB, all right? So I'll try and do it one more time, okay? That negative 1 is brought in front, meaning, you know, because multiplication is commutative, each of them is one term. 2 minus x is one term, negative 1 is one term, and 2 plus x is one term. I've just rearranged those terms, and that is what's meant by multiplication is associative, commutative, either way, you know, you can just rearrange those terms. So just rearrange by bringing negative 1 there in front. Now, the next one, in the denominator, you have negative x and the square of that, okay? And that also you could have written it like this, you know, negative 1 times an x and the square of that, you know, and that will try and tell you that, you know what, the square of negative 1 is always going to be negative 1. The square of negative 1 is always going to be positive 1, and the denominator is only going to be x squared. So that can be written. But what's going to happen in the numerator when you apply this rule, this particular rule, okay? A minus b, a plus b, the difference of squares tells you that it's 2 minus x and 2 plus x. So we can write this expression now as ln of that negative, and then you have the square of 2 is 4 and the square of x is x squared. In the denominator, I'll just write it as x squared. I have explained what happens. Okay, negative 1 in the denominator, this one, square is just going to be positive 1, and that x squared. Okay, so you have a negative, and this is what that entire fancy thing reduces to. Can you see that? Now, how do we take care of that negative sign? Now you can distribute that negative sign in the numerator to write it as it's at negative times negative 4 is a negative 4. Sorry, negative times of 4 is a negative 4, and the negative times that negative is a positive x square. Okay, and divided by x square. There you go. So you have ln of, you can write it as x square minus 4 over n x square. That is what that entire f of x reduces to, and you can write down x is less than a negative 2 as they've given. This term inside, this term, they said that, you know, find an expression for g of x. That g of x is that term inside, and so therefore you can say, the last sentence, you can say therefore g of x is that term inside, which is x square minus 4 over x square. That should be good. And here you should say actually that x is not equal to 0, because clearly looking at that the domain of g of x, you know that denominator cannot be 0. Okay, so what we've done, the function f can be rewritten in the form ln of g of x. Find an expression for g of x. Would they have given us marks if we had stopped here? Okay, would they have given us marks? They would have given you, because you followed the rules, because what they're testing in this particular question is whether you are applying the rules or the laws of logarithms correctly. I hope the screen, I'm sharing the entire screen. Okay, here we go. All right, would they have given us marks if you had stopped here without using that algebraic expression for a square minus b square? Okay, my guess is yes. Okay, because the main purpose is to see whether you can use or apply that laws of logs rather than bringing it down to this particular form. However, as you will see in the other parts, it is going to be used. Okay, so part B. All right, part B, it says find the range of f inverse of x. Now this is points just like that. What do I mean by that? Okay, so let's just explain. The range of f inverse, or the range of any function, is basically the domain of the original function. I'll repeat that again. Okay, let me just show myself on the screen. The range of the inverse function is the domain of the original function. And how do we explain that? Well, do we have space here? No, not at all. Okay, let's just put it up here. Okay, so I'll just draw a line so that separates from the earlier question that we solved in part, what part was it? Part 9. This is part 10, right? Yeah, in part 9. Okay, those are the working from there. So I'm just going to continue here. This is for part B. And I'll just do the explanation, and then we can write down what the answer is. What I mean by that is that, you know, you have, how do we define, you know, if this is the domain of the function, and let's just describe the arrow going from here to here as the function, and the arrow going in the other direction as the inverse. Okay, so this is the inverse function. Okay, so the inverse goes from here to here. So let's just call this set A. Let's just call that set B. That set A is the domain of the function. You know, the input from f. The f goes in this direction from A to B. So A happens to be the domain of f, whereas the domain of f inverse, because that's the direction that f inverse goes, right? So B happens to be the domain of f inverse. Okay, make sure that you get that right. And then this would be the range of f. So literally, you can see that the range of f is the domain of f inverse, and the domain of f is the range of f inverse. This is why algebraically, when we find the inverse of a function, we swap x and y, right? We interchange x and y. Wherever there's an x, we write y. Wherever there's a y, we write x. Why do we do that? Because literally the domain and the range get interchanged. Okay, A and B. Why are we talking about domain and range in this question? I have no idea. But basically, all I'm trying to say is that, you know, when you read that and I said it is important, this refers to the domain. This refers to the domain of the original function. Domain of the original function is the range of the inverse function, is what we said, right? Domain of the original function is the range of the inverse function. So the moment we write that, okay, you can write that as the answer as domain of fx is the range of f inverse of x. I would suggest at least this statement would be enough as a justification, because it's out of 2 points. If it is just 1 point, then you can write down range of f inverse. You don't have to do that Venn diagram, okay? You don't need to do that Venn diagram, but at least that one statement to justify that would be good enough, okay? So you can write the domain, the range of f inverse is what they've asked, right? The range of f inverse is that, but write it with a y, okay? Domain is expressed with an x, the input x, But the range you have to write as so you can write on y is less than negative 2, just like that. You can write on y is less than negative 2. And because it's the y values are f inverse values, you could also write it as f inverse of x is less than a negative 2. Okay, that's it, I think, for part B. And then part C is where the main part of the algebra in this particular question is. Okay, again, this question tends to be so much more algebraic. It says a function f inverse can be written in the form. The algebra, that's where the algebra is. The function f inverse can be written in the form a over under root of 1 minus e to the power of x. Find the value of a. Again, as I said, it's fairly algebraic and it's 5 points. Yeah, my guess is it's going to get a little intense, and my other guess is that this video is going to get really long. Should we stop or should we go? It's 15 minutes. Maybe why don't we just stop and continue in the next video? Should we do that? Or should we just go on 15 minutes? Let's just continue, okay? Because this algebra is going to be a little longer, okay? So here we are. This is part C. I'm just going to make sure. Let me just go adjacent here, okay? Adjacent here. Because in the following parts, I need the space below. So here we go. This is part C, all right? This is question 10, part C. And it says f inverse can be written in the form. So basically, you have to find f inverse. As I said here, you are interchanging x and y. So let's start at f of x, okay? So I am going to use that expression that I found, this one that I found. I'm going to use this expression. And I guess this is the reason it was important that you bring it down to the most compact form to find the inverse, okay, to find the inverse, because they're just saying that f inverse can be written in the form of a over under root of 1 minus e to the power of x. The moment you have that idea e, that means that, it needs to be in a single term. Let me know if you're able to do it from that step. Let me know in the comments if you're able to pull it off. But I think it needs to be written in the most compact form to be able to, then identify a over under root of 1 minus e to the power of x. And then it says in part C, find the value of that a. Find the value of that a. Okay, 5 points. Let's go. So I'm going to use f of x is equal to ln of, I think x square minus 4 over an x square. Let me just double check that quickly. Double check x square minus x square. Yeah, there we go. All right. So this is my y. This is rewriting. This is my y equals ln of x square minus 4 over x square. Now, this is what we teach, and this is probably your teachers have taught you how to find the inverse, interchange x and y. I think I do that first. However, you know what? I encourage my students to write that symbol, because suddenly algebraically when you're writing x in place of y and y in place of x, nobody knows what's going on. So you basically instructed, or you made it clear that you are interchanging x and y, and that notation basically indicates that. Just a little tip, how to write your algebraic responses much more clearly, all right? So there you go. I can then say, okay, that's my x. That's going to be my y square minus 4 over a y square, all right? Now, the way to, you can take, on both sides of the equation, you can raise it to e. So this is just becomes e to the power of x is y square minus 4 over a y square. And now be careful, because you got to isolate y. Remember, you're writing for y. So this is going to be y squared times e to the power of x equals y square minus 4. Let's collect y squares. So we have y square times e to the power of x minus y square equals a negative 4. All right, I'm going to continue on this side now. This is visible? Yeah, let me factor out that y square. Y square e to the power of x minus 1 equals a negative 4. And so my y square must be equal to a negative 4 over e to the power of x minus 1. Now, when you're at that stage, a quick hint is that keep an eye on what is required. I always tell my children that, keep an eye on where we want, because and this is mostly, I think as I said, this is more like an AA question, show that it is in this form. And it's literally in that form. The function f inverse x can be written in that form. And what I mean to say is that keep an eye on that. Because what happens is with algebra, every step makes sense. You add something, you subtract something, you multiply something. There's nothing wrong with the step, but is it actually taking you where you're supposed to go? That's the question you got to ask. And my hint at this stage is keep an eye on this. Keep an eye on this. And so when you keep an eye on this and say, okay, look at the denominator. The number a is what you're supposed to find out. So you look at the denominator, it says under root of 1 minus e to the power of x. 1 minus e to the power of x. And what do we have here? We have e to the power of x minus 1. So we need to change that order. That's what I mean. Keep an eye on where we need to go and then make the algebraic manipulations accordingly. Because otherwise, anything that you do in algebra can be justified. But is it taking me? Are my algebraic steps taking me where I'm supposed to go? That's the question. How do we then write it as 1 minus e to the power of x? Well, factor out a negative. Factor out a negative. And I'll show you that in a bit. So negative 4 on the numerator. Denominator, I'm going to write it as negative of 1 minus e to the power of x. And there's a reason behind it, okay? It's not just about memorizing, okay? Reason. Why? Because we wanted that form. We want as 1 minus, I don't know, is that looking at an x or a k? It should be an x, by the way. We want under root, and that under root will come through. Don't worry about it. We have a y square, so that can be taken care of. It's under root of 1 minus e to the power of x. Earlier, in that step, we had e to the power of x minus 1. All that I've done is that I've factored that negative, and so it's still, when you distribute, you can check it again. It's negative 1 minus and minus makes it plus. So the value, we have not changed the value of the right hand side. We have just rearranged and factored out the negative. Now what that does is that it also helps us to cancel this negatives, so that now you get y square as 4 over 1 minus e to the power of x. Do you see that? Okay, so I think I made a larger bracket in the denominator, and then when you find y, you can say that must be the plus or minus square root of the term 4 over 1 minus e to the power of x. The numerator is a square number, so clearly you can write that as plus or minus 2 over this. The term in the denominator is under root, and now you can see that's my f inverse. Okay, I'm just going to continue writing here. I hope this algebra step is clear. Okay, just give you a couple of seconds to take a look at it, because then I'll flip that side. Plus minus 2 square root of 1 minus e to the power of my e to the power of x. Okay, and then let me just draw another line here. Another line here. Should have drawn with the pink color. Never mind. Ready? As I said, I'm keeping all the mistakes. They're not actually mistakes, but all the things that typically you'd edit to make the video look clean. But math is messy. Yeah, man, math is messy, and it's good to see that. I would have made a corny humor by saying, when I say math is messy, I'm not talking about the football player. Bad joke. Okay, y equals plus or minus 2 over under root of 1 minus e to the power of okay, that's clear. And this term is my f inverse of x. It's just a plus or minus 2 over under root of 1 minus e to the power of x. Now, once you got that, remember that's just f inverse. The question was, can you see this? There you go. The question was to find out the value of a. To find out the value of a. The value of a, if you were to look at the definition very clearly, should actually correspond to negative 2. Should actually correspond to negative 2. You know why? Because x is strictly greater than negative. That's one reason. The domain, the domain, when the domain of f, remember, is the range of f inverse, and that value you're going to get is only when the value of a is going to be a negative 2. Okay, so look at that, the expression that you have. You have the expression, it's plus or minus, right? Plus or minus. The term under the radical, this term is always going to be positive. Denominator, I'm just writing my reason behind, okay? Denominator is always positive because, square root, it's going to be a positive term. That means only the numerator that's going to be an issue, right? Which means this term, the a term, it must be a negative 2, okay? It has to be, one second, the f inverse of x must be a negative 2 over under root of 1 minus e to the power of x. Because we have, as we have said, the f inverse. Remember the earlier part? What did you say? The range? Where was that? Yeah, here we said, the f inverse values. F inverse values. This was, I don't know which part this was. Part B, is it? Part B. We said that the range, that means f inverse values are less than negative 2. If you say that it is 2, then it will not be less than negative 2. Okay, so here you can say that clearly this means a must be equal to negative 2 as f inverse values, f inverse of x is less than negative 2, and you can say from part B that you answered. Okay, So that means a must be equal to -2, okay? So I think that's all the time that we have for this particular video. If you found something useful, something helpful, please make sure you like, share this video with someone, and subscribe to my channel. If you visit my channel, you'll find several other videos, plenty of videos. Do check them out. And if there's any question, any topic that you'd like explained and you want me to make a video, please make sure that you mention that in the comments and I will make a video for you.